we see that this is quite troubling times. Israel has attacked the nuclear power plants at Bushehr and Natanz, and Iran has retaliated against the city of Dimona, where the Israelis have their own nuclear plants. This was not an attack on the nuclear plant, apparently, but nearby in terms of hitting the city. So it does seem that we could be moving to a de facto nuclear war if this is the new trend that is attacking nuclear facilities with the possibility of a nuclear fallout. And making matters worse, we see that Trump gave Iran this ultimatum of 48 hours to open the Strait of Hormuz, essentially capitulate. Otherwise, they would start hitting Iran's largest energy fields. And we see that the Iranian military headquarters, if I get this right, warned that if the U.S. would carry through on these threats, then they would knock out the energy facilities, and desalination plants across the Gulf states would essentially be the end of this this state. So we're looking almost towards total war here. I was wondering if you can give me your assessment of what is happening, because this seems like uncontrolled escalation at this point.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Glenn. It's always a pleasure being on your show. Yes, but we have to keep in mind, of course, and I know your audience knows this, but Western media, for some reason, pretends as if this were not the case. The war began with U.S.-Israeli aggression, like 8-9 months ago. And every attack was met with a response. In other words, the Iranians are retaliating. They're not initiating anything. So the attack last night on the Israeli regime and on buildings linked to their nuclear program was in response to their strike on Iranian nuclear facility. And Iran's response to escalation has already been seen by all of us when the Israeli regime, with U.S. coordination, there's no doubt about that, when they struck Iran's vital gas installation in the South Pars gas field, the Iranians swiftly responded and destroyed significant parts of Qatar's gas facilities and its LNG facilities in particular, and Saudi and Emirati energy facilities. And the reason why Iran did that was to make sure that the United States didn't go further. And then we saw Trump post on social media that the Israeli regime won't do this again. Of course, he then made threats against Iran, but that was to cover basically this retreat, the fact that he wanted to back down. But of course, Trump is Trump, and he says one thing now, and then literally an hour later, he'll say something very different. So his promises that the Israeli regime will not strike again don't mean anything to the Iranians. They will always, when it comes to the United States, plan for the worst, and especially when it's Trump. You recall, before the war, we had this discussion about whether there will be a war. I always said that Iran is planning for the worst. It doesn't care what Trump says. The same is true now. So now Trump is making another threat, and that is that he will destroy Iran's vital infrastructure and target its electrical power plants. He already made that threat before, and Dr. Larijani tweeted that if that happens, as you pointed out earlier, there will be massive retaliation. And nothing happened back then. After Iran's response to the attack on the South Pars gas field, it's clear what Iran is going to do if the United States does carry out this threat. And that would mean that the world will head towards a global economic catastrophe, something that I've been saying for many years. Before Corona, I actually had an interview on Press TV that went viral back then. I said exactly what we're now seeing. If Iran's vital infrastructure is destroyed, Iran will destroy everything on the other side of the Persian Gulf, because these regimes are all engaged in warfare against Iran. They've allowed the United States to use the airspace. They've allowed the United States to use bases. They've allowed the United States to use their land outside the bases. They not only allow jets to fly over to bomb Iran, but they allow tankers to refuel those jets. They do everything necessary to kill Iranians. So they are fully complicit. And a strike targeting Iran's key or vital infrastructure is a strike to target the Iranian nation. And of course, a major crime against humanity, which in the West doesn't mean anything, because after Trump's threat last night, we didn't see any Western media say that this is outrageous or that this is a threat against over 90 million people. No, because Western media collectively, they are Epstein class controlled. So it doesn't matter if it's Guardian or Breitbart, they're all the same when it comes to empire. So this means, if he carries out this attack, that the energy crisis will be permanent and that the global economy will collapse. And that will have implications that are beyond my imagination. I can think of horrible things, hundreds of millions of people on the move, starvation, the collapse of industry. I can think of many, many things, but it will be because of Trump. And if Iran is forced to destroy that key infrastructure, then it doesn't matter if there's an end to the hostilities and Iran allows the Strait of Hormuz to be open, because there will be no oil or gas to go through it and no tankers to take that energy or petrochemicals or anything else. So we are where we are, but I just want to stress that Iran didn't push us here. Iran's threats are being made so that the United States doesn't do anything stupid. I mean, this whole war is stupid. It is barbaric. It is inhumane, and it is fully supported by the West and its regional proxies, as we saw Erdogan and Sisi and Abdullah and Jordan and these regimes in the Persian Gulf condemned Iran for retaliation against U.S. assets in the Persian Gulf, and they didn't even mention the Israeli and American war of aggression on Iran, because they're in the American camp. The UN Security Council, too, condemned Iran and refused to even acknowledge this assault on the country. So Iran is on its own. It has to carry out its threats of retaliation. Otherwise, the United States will bomb Iran and destroy asset after asset. Vital infrastructure throughout the country will be destroyed. The only way to stop it is to have deterrence, and for that deterrence to be used after credible warnings are given. And that is where we are right now.
Yeah, I also saw the G7 came out with a statement condemning Iran for retaliating. And as you said, no mention of the second surprise attack, the destruction of Iran's energy, civilian infrastructure, or any reference to international law. It was just condemning Iran for retaliating. And I saw you also made a comment that it would have been, if the situation was reversed, how absurd it would be. That is, if China was putting its missiles in Canada, launching them at the United States, and somehow then Canada declares neutrality thereafter. I mean, it doesn't really make much sense at all. And I think, but nonetheless, Iran can't strike the mainland in the U.S. and the rules appears to be that Iran isn't allowed, according to its rules, to attack the ones who are actually attacking Iran. So it is an interesting efforts to dictate the rules of this war. But as you suggest, it's not actually working. But is this an accidental escalation which is out of control, or do you see this being deliberate on Trump's side, that he's saying essentially, listen, Iran, either you capitulate or, which is essentially a ceasefire, or you accept, or we're going to go up the escalation ladder? Because the whole assumption is premised on the notion that the U.S. has escalation dominance. That means the U.S. can bring it up to a certain amount of pain in which Iran would have to be the one who folds first. But where do you see this going? Because we're not at the end stop, obviously. We're rushing up quite quickly. And the nuclear power plants, I found this to be just extraordinary, because what would happen if Israel and the U.S. would then destroy a nuclear plant, a reactor, and there would be some nuclear fallout like Chernobyl? How do you see the war? Well, how is this essentially the top of the escalation ladder, or how would Iran, I guess, do a tit for tat if this would happen?
The Iranians